So we had two different organizations. I like to say that CMHA is, as of today, we are 364 days old. So tomorrow we celebrate our 1-year anniversary. But prior to that, we had two different organizations. We had the National Concrete Masonry Association, of which I was involved, and we had the Interlocking Concrete Pavement Institute, so ICPI and NCMA. And we really had the opportunity to evaluate how the two organizations were relating to each other and how we were working together, and basically went through a process with the leadership of the two organizations to decide how we could improve that relationship and inner working to support each other and our respective members, and ultimately concluded that the best approach was simply to merge the two organizations.
This is Associations Thrive, the podcast celebrating successful associations and their leaders. I'm your host, Joanna Pineda, CEO and Chief Troublemaker at Matrix Group International. Listen in as top association executives tell all, revealing the creative and innovative ways they're increasing membership, generating revenue, nurturing engagement, and reimagining their organizations. By the way, if you've launched a new initiative, created new member services, or updated your governance structure and are seeing great results, I want to hear your story, and so do my listeners. I'd love to have you as a guest. Go to podcast.matrixgroup.net and apply to be on Associations Thrive. Now let's dive into this week's show. Today, I'm speaking with Bob Thomas, President and CEO of the Concrete Masonry and Hardscapes Association, or CMHA. Bob, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Joanna. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Tell us about CMHA.
CMHA, another acronym, right? Ours is Concrete Masonry and Hardscapes Association. We represent the manufacturers and suppliers of manufactured concrete products that are used in masonry construction and in hardscape construction. So we also represent contractors, particularly in the area related to hardscapes construction.
So Bob, for those of us who are not familiar with the industry, tell us what concrete masonry is and how is it different from hardscapes?
So concrete masonry, the easiest way for a lot of your listeners to think about it is cinder block. Everybody is familiar with that term cinder block, even though cinders have not been used in the production of concrete products in generations, really. But anyway, concrete block is a building material that has been used for well over 100 years for building our schools and our firehouses and our hospitals and stadiums, a significant construction material, right? So that would be what we would consider is our vertical construction side. But we also have a horizontal construction component. So it's using the same types of concrete materials that are pre-manufactured, segmental types of products that are used in more interlocking concrete pavement applications. And so that would really be the hardscaping side. Now, hardscaping is kind of a term that many of your listeners might also not be very familiar with. So if you think about hardscaping, it's a form of playing off of the term landscaping. Landscaping would be more lawn and plants, that type of stuff, which we tend to now refer to as softscaping. And so the hardscaping is using more concrete materials or natural stone, that type of thing to create living environments.
So I might use hardscapes to improve a garden or improve a lawn, create a path, to segment it, etc. Now, let me ask you a question. So is there a lot of innovation happening in these two segments of the industry?
Yeah, I would say there is. In some ways, the hardscape side of our business is a relatively new segment of the industry. When I say new, it's probably in that 50 years type of a construct. So really kind of came over from Europe in terms of a market development for us with using concrete for that type of application. So we've seen brick sidewalks and cobblestone roads, those types of things forever. But a relatively new adaptation and an expansion of what people are doing to make living spaces connected outside. And we're taking advantage of that constantly, right? We can't all be living inside, playing on Zoom and watching TV and playing video games all the time. We got to get outside and enjoy our environment. And so we see it in homes and in commercial office settings where we're trying to find ways to make living spaces and commuting spaces outside. And so that segment of our industry has been really growing over the years. And so we're constantly getting new textures, new colors, more ways of putting things together, installation practices, that type of thing. So that'd be on the hardscaping side. There's all kinds of innovations on the vertical construction side too. If you start to think about how much our buildings are changing, right, over time, we have to address issues like fire and energy and the ability for buildings to breathe and adapt and those types of issues. So there's constant innovations in terms of the way that the products are put together and assembled. Robotics is a new evolution in terms of installation, all kinds of innovations that are still occurring.
So, Bob, I think of concrete as this pretty basic building material, and that's a really large industry. Are you a part of that? Are you that industry? Like, what's your niche in this whole concrete field?
Excellent question, right? So we are what I would consider is a subset of a much broader concrete industry. So concrete by itself, you may not realize this, Joanna, but in reality, concrete is the second most consumed product on the planet. Second only to, and I think you've heard of the other one, water.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so literally 10 billion tons of concrete are produced and consumed annually. So that's literally 3 tons per year for every person that exists in the world. That's a lot. So concrete is a significant industry, provides a lot of jobs. It really shapes the world that we live in, right? Everything from bridges to dams to sidewalks to buildings to you name it, right? It's what propels our world and houses our world in so many ways. But we're a small part of that. We're manufactured concrete products. So we're pre-manufactured in the plant and then brought to a job site and assembled typically by hand by craft workers to create finished products in the field, right? So most of the products that we would represent are those that are made small enough that could be picked up and handled by a person by hand, right? And installed by hand. So we have masons that install our product and we have hardscape installers.
Bob, we're going to have to, in the show notes, and maybe you can help me out, link out to some pages on your website that have examples of the products, because I've seen many of them and they're gorgeous. Like, who knew this stuff could be so pretty?
We'd be happy to do that. Lots of great examples of finished pieces of construction.
Before we turn to the things that CMHA is doing to thrive, and thriving you are, let's talk about your journey. So how did you get to become president and CEO of CMHA?
I'd like to think it's a fascinating story.
It always is.
It always is, right? So this is my 33rd year with the association.
Wow.
I would say my entire career, not exactly true. I did have another job that I took right after coming out of college, but my journey actually started before really I entered the workforce. So I was a civil engineering graduate. And as I moved on to graduate school to pursue structural engineering as a master's degree program, I ended up at the University of Texas in Austin. And I had the opportunity there to learn about a fellowship that was available from the National Concrete Masonry Association. And it was their first scholarship that was being offered from their newly created Education and Research Foundation. So that supported the work that I was doing. So I did a research project on concrete masonry infill walls at the University of Texas. I had the opportunity to do some research work in their research laboratory at the University of Texas and come to present my work to the National Concrete Masonry Association's annual meeting back in 1989. So after I graduated, I went into the year where I worked as a construction engineer, and an opening came available at the association within their research and development laboratory. And I took that back in 1990. And since then have had additional opportunities to be involved first in supporting our technical resource development, our technical advocacy, supporting education for engineers and architects for how to design and use concrete masonry. And from there, eventually evolved into other association management opportunities to the point where I've now been the executive director capacity for the last 15 years.
Wow, congratulations. That is quite the journey. So, Bob, you mentioned NCMA, the National Concrete Masonry Association, but you're president and CEO of CMHA. You had a merger recently of two organizations, so tell us about that.
Yeah, so merger actually has been an exciting time and process for us. So we had two different organizations. I like to say that CMHA is, as of today, Joanna, we are 364 days old.
Oh, congratulations.
Yep. So tomorrow we celebrate our 1-year anniversary. But prior to that, we had two different organizations. We had the National Concrete Masonry Association, of which I was involved, and we had the Interlocking Concrete Pavement Institute, so ICPI and NCMA. And we really had the opportunity to evaluate how the two organizations were relating to each other and how we were working together, and basically went through a process with the leadership of the two organizations to decide how we could improve that relationship and inner working to support each other and our respective members, and ultimately concluded that the best approach was simply to merge the two organizations. So we both represented contractors of concrete products. They were manufactured in a similar way, manufactured on similar equipment. And so we had enough similarities that we had a lot of common producers and associates and suppliers that were involved in the two organizations. So they were investing a lot more to support two organizations, and we were dividing, if you will, our human capital between two different organizations, and capital expenses, overhead expenses for two organizations, that we really identified the opportunity to combine them so that we could be better and stronger as a single organization.
Now, Bob, I've actually worked with organizations that have tried to merge, and sometimes the politics got in the way and it never happened, or sometimes it took 3 tries. What was it like to try to merge 2 boards, 2 staff, 2 sets of committees, and really 2 sets of membership where it doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of overlap between the manufacturers and the contractors, or is there?
There's a fair amount of overlap between the manufacturers.
I see. Okay. So that was another reason behind the merger.
Absolutely. And we're just like every industry where consolidation continues to happen. And so when you start to have consolidation, you start to have multiple segments of an industry that start to come under one house, under a larger company. And so our member companies, so our larger members for both organizations were the same. And we certainly had a driver from that perspective. And I'd like to say we got this on the first time, but as you pointed out, mergers are hard.
Yeah.
There's cultural differences, there's other factors, and those were things that we had to wade through first. But I will say one of the things that made it successful for us is that we were very deliberate about it. We took our time. We recognized it was going to be a multi-year process to get people comfortable with the idea, to make sure that their concerns were heard, that we had a very member-engaged process into how we wanted to set up the new organization. And so ultimately, I think that investment of energy and time and engagement is what made it possible. We had a lot of communication, a lot of town halls, a lot of interactions back and forth. And so we had enough conviction and enough support from leadership and champions that recognized the value of this, that we were able to kind of continue to keep it moving to the point where July 1st of last year was our first day as a new organization.
So all in all, CMHA as an organization has existed for almost a year. When did you start the process?
Let's see. So that was July 1 of 2022. We really started initial conversations in the fall of 2020.
Oh.
And it started small with initial conversations. And then we pulled in some consultants to help us manage the process and to identify both opportunities. And we started, again, I think the key thing is that we started with an assumption that we wanted to improve the way that the two organizations supported and collaborated each other. But we didn't start with the assumption that merger was the solution. So we let that happen on its own.
So you didn't have the outcome decided on. You had kind of this goal of we need to work together better and support our members better. And what that's going to look like, we don't know yet. Merging was one of the options.
Correct.
Interesting.
And I will say the culture was one of those things that everybody says are the things that have the potential to get in the way. What we identified is that there were really pluses to the cultures of both organizations. And so personally, I was excited about the opportunity of taking the best of both cultures. Now, you're always going to have people that look at it and got comfortable with one culture or the other. So It is an evolution, but I can say it's been working very well so far. The cultures were a little bit different. I mean, NCMA we would have been 105 years old this year as NCMA. And ICPI would have been 28 years old this year. And as I said, the interlocking concrete pavement is a little bit of a newer technology. And so there was a more entrepreneurial spirit and drive, a little bit younger, less multi-generational types of companies, as opposed to the concrete masonry industry, which had a much longer period. But like I said, within the marketplace, those cultures were already merging, right? So companies were going through that as well. So it was only natural for the association to do it.
Well, congratulations. It sounds like there was a lot of thought that went into it, and it sounds like the merger is going well. And I'll tell you, my team has the opportunity to work with yours on the new website that we're working on with you for this new entity, and it's been a pleasure. I mean, it's been really interesting to kind of explore what the new CMHA brand and the services that you're going to offer this unified industry. So love it. Bob, let's talk about something that you say is really about to benefit the whole industry. And that's something that you've been working on for a while, and that's a commodity checkoff. What is that, and how's it going to benefit the industry?
Yeah, so this one started with the concrete masonry side of our organization. And so NCMA looked at the need for doing an increased level of promotion to help advance the role that concrete masonry can play in our society, right? So we're extremely proud of the fact that concrete masonry provides safety and security and a tremendous investment, beautiful structures that can be used from everything from single family homes to apartment buildings to those fire stations and community centers. And some of these things become places of refuge and protection when there are natural disasters, right? And part of it is because we have learned over the years on how to take advantage of this inherent strength of concrete and to reinforce it so that it can survive hurricanes and tornadoes and wildfires and both natural disasters and man-made disasters, right? And so if you look at climate change and security issues that we have today, there's an increasing demand and need for us to build things the right way. So we found that this resilience equation is that for every dollar that you invest in resilient construction that has a better chance of surviving these natural and man-made disasters, you save $6 in terms of the benefit that comes back. Because if you think of the cost of a natural disaster that businesses can't open, that's the economy and revenue that just doesn't generate. But if you can build a structure so that it can survive and prosper and continue to operate afterwards, you're saving more money than the cost of the structure by many fold over. So we believe that the concrete masonry has a tremendous value to continue to supply in our modern buildings today. But admittedly, we're a little bit more expensive. It costs a little bit more to build for more than one generation. If you look at the U.S. construction economy, we're a fairly disposable construction economy, right? We have the mentality of we're going to tear it down and build it again. You look at Europe and they're building for a few more generations than that. Right. So we believe that we've got a great story to tell, but the problem is we had a lot of manufacturers scattered across the country that were making a product that was a relative commodity type of a product. And so they didn't have the resources and the capital to be able to really market and promote their product. And so we've been kind of limited in terms of what our ability is to tell the story without having increased resources to do that. So we started doing some research, what other industries have had similar problems to that. And the one that we really kind of came across, the agriculture industry. If you think about it, agriculture is critical to our national security and our well-being, our ability to prosper and grow. But there are a lot of small manufacturers, right? You can consider a farmer as a manufacturer.
Right.
Now, there's been a lot of consolidation in that industry as well, but there's still a lot of small farmers that have a small footprint. They may sell to, say, a local granary, but they may not be involved in trade associations.
Or a lot of chicken farmers supplying Purdue, and then Purdue's the big manufacturer.
Absolutely. But they were a tremendously large and important industry. Each one of those farmers that were engaged in whatever type of a agricultural commodity that they supplied. But as a collective industry, they didn't have the wherewithal to act like a progressive industry. So who acted as that? It was the government. So the government invested resources in research and education and promotion related to that so that we would have that stable production that was needed to not only support our economy, but to help with our trades with other countries around the world. So they worked with the agricultural industry to say, let's create an opportunity for the manufacturers or the farmers to make a decision for themselves if they want to support the growth and promotion of their industry by contributing a certain amount per product sold or per piece, whatever, that would go into a fund that would benefit the entire industry. And so thus was born the commodity checkoff programs. And so today we have them for 25 or 30 different programs. And you've heard the taglines for a lot of them.
Got milk.
Got milk. That's the biggest one. That's the one that lots of people know, right?
So that's a checkoff program. That means for every gallon of milk that I'm buying, there's money that's going into the entity that's running this program. What are they doing? They're promoting milk, but they're also doing research and they're doing education. And so now you've got one for concrete masonry?
Yep. So we identified that program could also apply to us. Now, the difficulty is that we're not an agricultural product, but we made the argument that we're a form of a commodity product. A gray concrete block, a standard concrete block is pretty ubiquitous. So margins are low, lots of small producers that support all the communities around the U.S. So we worked with the Department of Commerce. And actually, before we had worked with the Department of Commerce, we had to go to Congress and get Congress to authorize a program. And we became the first program authorized under the Department of Commerce.
Oh.
So the Department of Commerce oversaw a referendum with those companies that operate within our industry.
So the members voted on the checkoff program, because if they said, no way, I'm not going to increase prices or, whatever, it's not going to work.
Right. And I have to clarify a little bit, not necessarily members.
Yes. Okay.
This is industry-wide. So they identified all of the players in the industry, whether they belong to a national association or a regional association, et cetera. And they gave the opportunity for all manufacturers to have a say in whether or not they wanted to create this program. So we got congressional authorization in 2018 after working on it for about 8 years to get Congress to pass the bill.
Wow.
2018, they authorized it. We conducted the industry referendum in 2020, and the board was appointed in 2022, and we started collections in 2023. Actually, the first collections are not going to be due yet for another couple of months. But once those eventually start rolling in, and it will be a penny per block that is sold, that will go into this research, education, and promotion fund, which should generate somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 million a year for promotion.
So, Bob, what's this money going to go towards, and how much of it do you get?
Well, there's actually a pretty good firewall that's built between the association and the Checkoff program entity.
Because it's a quasi-governmental organization.
Yep. And certainly our organization is a voluntary organization, right? We're like all of the organizations that you're doing these podcasts with. People choose to be a part of the association because they find value in the association. The Checkoff is a little bit different. The Checkoff is a mandatory contribution program being overseen by the Department of Commerce. So the industry completely runs it. And so the Secretary of Commerce has appointed members to the board to manage those funds and decide how the resources will be used to support the objective, which is to improve the use and sales of concrete masonry into the marketplace. So we will have a relationship because we have a common mission and interest to what the Checkoff has, but it'll have its own executive director. It'll have its own board. It'll be accountable to the collective industry. We're accountable to the members of our association. So we'll have the opportunity to provide services or manage programs on behalf of the Checkoff if they so choose to fund those programs through us. They'll also be funding programs through state and regional associations to support things on a local level. But it's all going to support awareness, providing more tools, software and design technologies for engineers and architects. It'll be helping to foster those innovations that we were talking about earlier, be it robotic types of construction or whatever may be. There's a lot of exciting opportunities ahead for what we believe is a true market and opportunity for our products.
This is amazing. And speaking of innovations, let's turn to something different. Man, there's so much going on at CMHA. You've got a large trade show called Hardscapes North America, where a lot of innovations are being showcased. So tell us about that. It's a big trade show.
It is. It's a big trade show, and we're actually co-located with the Equip Expositions. We meet annually in Louisville, Kentucky, at the convention center there, the Kentucky Exposition Center. And collectively between our two trade shows, so that one event draws like 25,000 people.
Wow.
In October. It's really created around reaching an audience that are landscape professionals, which our presence there extends it from both landscape professionals to hardscape professionals. And so we're really geared on supporting the attendees of that event with the technologies and the equipment and the education that they need to help make successful businesses. And so if you think about most of those contractors are out there, a lot of small contractors. And so they're all looking for a better understanding of technology and what's happening, what's new and innovative so that they can become more prosperous business owners themselves.
Yeah, and they're looking for new things to pitch that give them an edge, right? So that's why you go to a trade show.
Yep. And so we own the Hardscapes North America part of that event, and it is broader than just concrete hardscapes. So hardscaping does include other products, porcelain, natural stone, brick, clay brick types of applications. And so we are really there to benefit the contractors to get exposure to all of it. Now, our members, the concrete side of it, are prominent exhibitors and participate actively in it. But in this case, in addition to us representing manufacturers, as an association, we represent contractors as well. So that makes us a little bit different than some organizations. So we're a trade association, but representing a broader cross-section of those players within our space. So we don't represent mason contractors because there's another organization that's been around a long time as well that represents that segment of the industry, but we do represent the installers of our concrete products for pavements and retaining walls.
Wow, sounds super exciting. It sounds like you've created an event that attracts all kinds of manufacturers including many manufacturers that aren't your members. So you're really benefiting the whole industry.
Yeah, it's exciting when you get that formula where every single party that's involved is finding tremendous value in it, to the point that they're willing to invest, whether it's as an attendee or as a speaker or as an exhibitor. So yeah, it's a great time. We love the Kentucky Exposition Center because they've got a grassy field as part of their facility there.
Oh.
And if there's anything that the guys in Kentucky know how to do, it's how to grow grass. So the outdoor equipment, power equipment guys are very active part of that show for Equip. And so there's a lot of outdoor space where attendees can come out and test drive, backhoes and lawnmowers and snow blowers.
So they're tearing up the grass.
They're tearing up the grass. And they're in Kentucky. They're like, go ahead, tear it up. We'll just grow it back again. So It's a very dynamic environment, and we're having a lot of fun with it.
I hear about all these shows, and I want to attend every single one of them after these interviews.
Yep, you'd enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm sure I'd enjoy it. Bob, you've got this mission around sustainability that I want to talk about for a second, because creating concrete is a significant emitter of CO2, and you've probably had criticism of the industry. But sustainability is a key initiative for you. So what are you doing in this area? It sounds important.
It's tremendously important. All of us have a responsibility to protect and nurture our planet. As a society, we all need to evolve and do our part relative to it. So certainly cement has been identified in some of these, circles as a contributor to CO2. It's natural, right? We're taking natural materials that are mined out of the earth that have embodied carbon dioxide, carbon within them.
Right.
So when we take that out and we go through a process of creating what's called clinker, which is part of what you use to manufacture Portland cement, there is a byproduct, a chemical transformation of that results in that CO2 being released to the atmosphere. And it's as much as 8% of all the CO2 emissions on the planet come from the manufacture of cement. Now, our organization, our members do not manufacture the cement, but we are a consumer of cement because it is, as we talked about before, a product in manufacturing concrete. But we want to make sure that when we're evaluating the value and the contributions, that we look at a holistic approach. There are a couple of things. Number one, we are looking at trying to document what concrete products actually sequester after they're manufactured. So a concrete block or a concrete paver does actually absorb CO2 back into the unit. That is one element that's not counted. So we're trying to quantify that. And we're also trying to set standards around it so that everybody can calculate things in a similar manner. So we're a very technical-based organization, both on design and construction, but also in this space of material usage and quantifying results in a manner that is standardized. So we're investing a lot of effort on that side of CO2 sequestration for our individual products, but it's also focusing on how the product is used. A lot of our pavements that we are promoting today are permeable concrete pavements, which means that the water that comes from rain events has the ability to percolate through the pavement and be captured underneath the pavement so that what hits the stormwater engineering solution environments is delayed, deferred, reduced, and you don't pick up all of the things that come from surface water runoff before it goes into that, right? And contaminates the collection. So part of it is helping governments and municipalities and designers, engineers, owners to better take advantage of what our products supply, both from that security, safety, resilience, sustainability approach.
Bob, you are doing so much. There are so many things we didn't cover. You're going to have to come back to talk about all these other things. But before we go, how is membership?
Hey, I would say our membership is doing very well. So we have a total of about 280 members, and about half of those are producer members. And we've got associate suppliers and voting contractors and dealers and those kind of things. And then we also represent over 1,000 other contractors and non-voting members that come to take advantage of our education and our certification and those types of things. So I'll admit we had some concerns about how our unification, we call it a unification rather than a merger, how our unification was going to affect membership, but our retention was very strong through it. I credit a lot of leadership and engagement from our membership to make that happen. So we're very pleased with how membership has made the transition to our new organization.
Bob, congratulations on all your successes. Thank you for sharing so much about the Checkoff program and the trade show. And I mean it. I have to have you back because we didn't talk about the lab. We didn't talk about the tech resources. We didn't talk about the certifications so much. I want to thank you for being a guest today.
Joanna, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I appreciate the work that you and your organization are doing to showcase the role that associations are playing in our society. They contribute so much, and so many people have so little understanding of what they do, but your listeners do understand it. And I appreciate you highlighting. I've learned a lot from listening to your podcast.
Thanks for listening to Associations Thrive. We're so glad to have you here. You know, my personal mission and the mission of my company, Matrix Group International, is to help associations and nonprofits increase membership, generate revenue, and thrive in the digital space. I want to hear stories of how your organization is thriving in today's challenging landscape. Please apply to be on my show by going to podcast.matrixgroup.net. By the way, do you need help with a digital initiative? Maybe it's a website redesign, a new membership database, or a hybrid meeting that you're planning. I'd love to connect with you. Please visit the Matrix Group website at matrixgroup.net. Thanks again for listening to this week's episode of Associations Thrive. Don't forget to subscribe to the show, leave a 5-star rating, post a comment, and share it with your colleagues and friends. Bye!